Great. So here's how I've done these in the past. Usually everyone takes out whatever note-taking apparatus or system that they want to go with. And in 20 minutes there's just smoke coming off the page because you're writing so fast and trying to get everything down. So my plan was, if I can do it the same way as I've done it in the past, is I'll tell the story of American history from 1492 through like the 1950s or so. I'd like to think that the stuff 1950s to the rest of the year you'd be pretty solid on because you heard it in the last month, right? But stuff that was from August, we might be jogging some of that for the first time in that memory for the first time in a while. Does that make sense? So take notes however you want. I'm going to do nothing but talk. If you want to stop me, you can. I have old podcasts of these recorded. They probably sound very similar to what I'll say today because I'm working off the same set of notes. My students in the past would download them, put them on their MP3 player, whether that was their phone or their iPod or whatever, and they'd listen to them. So I know that seems weird to walk home from school listening to my voice in your headphones, but I like to think that the more times you hear it and the more times you can tell the story along with me, that's really going to help you in the sequence of anything that you do on May 4th, May 8th. It's early this year. Yeah? The more times you hear it, the better. The more times you write it, the better. So my plan for today is to go from 1492 to 1763. Okay, so strap your seatbelts on. I'm not going to stop unless you stop me. All right, so 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Yeah, so it's not a bad starting point in the game of dates. And I don't know if Rooney, you play it the same way as you do with your AP, right? But it's not a horrible starting point for where we're at. There's some pre-1492 stuff, but the unit focus is really on two things: exploration and colonization. Exploration happens first, right? So I think in our discussion we should talk a little bit about exploration, and then we'll start talking about the three different colonial regions, right? Massachusetts Bay, Middle Colonies, or Chesapeake, the Southern Colonies, right? That kind of jogging some memories, all right? So I'll try to be really clear when I bring up vocab words that I think could appear, or that as you're writing in an EBQ, short answer, FRQ, these are the type of words that you really want in there. So England is last to the game in exploration, which is, we think England, right? They settled America, but they're sort of last to the game in exploring, but they're first to the game in colonizing, all right? At the time, Europeans thought that colonization was the most viable economic plan in Europe, and that's why they started to come to the New World looking for a positive balance of trade. So, you know, an econ guy like Rooney might tell you that mercantilism is driving all of this, right? Like that policy that either, there's only a fixed amount of wealth in the world. So how do you become more wealthy as a country? Well, either you can find gold, which is not always easy to do, right? Or you have to have a positive trade balance, right? You have to be selling more things to other people than you're actually purchasing. That's how you become wealthy. So that mercantilist system sort of pushes people to start thinking about West. Now, they had done it in Asia for years, right? They traded silks, they traded spices, you know, they got things into Europe that they couldn't grow in Europe. Europe's not a great place to grow stuff, but other places in the world were. So they had tried that in Asia, but of course Asia's not that close to Europe, and so they started looking for another way to try to get these things in a positive trade balance. So 1492, Columbus looks for a passage to the east. That overland passage was really dangerous, right? That Alaska, Russia, like the other side of the United States presently, was dangerous. And he lands in an area that's the modern-day Dominican Republic. So it's really an island off the coast of, you know, the southeastern portion of the United States. Lands on Hispaniola, calls it America, but it's really the Dominican Republic. I guess the better question is, on exploration, why is it happening now? And if you took Euro, you would know that this quest for gold sort of follows the age of the Renaissance, right? And so you have nation-state building in Europe. There's new inventions like the compass, the astrolabe, the caravel, there's faster technology to sail and navigate the globe. So, explorers start to get around the Cape of Africa, they're circumnavigating the globe like Magellan, and now they're starting to find new markets. So in many ways, exploration is really spurred by the Renaissance and technological advances that allow them to hop on a boat and get to other places besides, just traveling on land. So two of the first countries to explore, at least that Bailey talks about, are Spain and Portugal. And the commonality between Spain and Portugal was they were both Catholic countries. So predominantly Catholic. So as they start to explore the New World, there's more than just the officials in Portugal and Spain who have control over this. It's actually the Pope that actually puts a word in. And he draws this papal line of demarcation. Make sure you have that word down, right? And along that line, he had said, all right, Portugal, you get everything to the east, and Spain, you can get everything to the west. Well, what a great deal for Spain. Because if you look at where this line was drawn, right, it's not a real line painted over the ocean and land, it's an imaginary line, but the papal line of demarcation basically leaves all of North, Central, and South America to Spain, which is why there are so many native speakers in that area, right? And then native Spanish speakers. And then Portugal gets like basically nothing but a tip of Brazil. It's one of the reasons why if you go to Brazil today, they still speak Portuguese. Dr. Benuma, who will be next year's principal, speaks fluent Portuguese. She was born in Brazil, right? So Portugal just gets this little piece, basically, of South America to settle, and the Pope decides that. So the Treaty of Tordesillas, another one you want to mention, moves the line, sort of towards South America. And really, the stated goal of a lot of these explorers was to find gold. So guys like Cortez, Pizarro, Coronado, they're finding gold in what's present-day Mexico and South America, the Incan and Aztec empires. The Spanish would tell you that their goal was to Christianize, but oftentimes that happened at the barrel of a gun, right? So do you believe in God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit? Oh, no? Okay, boom, right? So that's that conquistador, right? There was violence, and there was, it wasn't a very good relationship between natives, mostly, I guess you wouldn't call them Native Americans, but Incans and Aztecs and tribes that have already been living on this land, and the Spanish, lots of murder and death. So the relationship between the Spanish and the New World certainly wasn't as good as, say, the French, right? So here's another group of explorers. The French are here to Christianize, and they get along pretty well with the natives. So, the AP likes when you use nice words instead of, just very basic language. So I would say the relationship between the French and the natives was very symbiotic, right? Think about symbiosis. It's a biology term. It means getting along together. So the French relied on the natives relied on the French needed the natives to help them, guide them towards the fur trapping. The French were really nomadic, they never really set up colonies, they had a presence in the New World, but really the French influence will happen where? What present-day country? It's Canada, right? I mean, it's the northeastern part of the United States on, north of the St. Lawrence Seaway into Canada. So that's the French. So you've got the Spanish, yes, we're here to Christianize, but we want your gold. We've got the French, they're very nomadic, they're trading, they're setting up different posts. We get along really well with people in the New World. And then, of course, you've got, your English. So the English are last to the game of exploration. They get to the Caribbean first. So what is the present-day Jamaica, Bahamas? Those two countries still have a relationship with Great Britain today. So if you look at a map, these small little island countries around the globe, a lot of them have like a little parentheses, and it'll say like UK, United Kingdom, or US, right? A lot of these small islands around the world, they actually belong to a larger parent country, if you will. So the wealthiest of the English went to the Caribbean first for sugar trade and started setting up plantations. And then eventually, by 1607, Jamestown was founded by a bunch of rogues who were funded by a joint stock company, right? That's where people pool their money together, and they're saying, this sounds like a great idea. Let's go to the New World. We'll sponsor you guys. We'll throw you the money to do it. And then a certain percentage or a profit of that venture would then come back to that company. So the joint stock company in 1607, it's a business venture. They're getting financial backing from the king. The London Company was the first example of that group that came over here. And again, their plan is to make money. There's a fixed amount of wealth in the world. We either need a better trade balance or we need to find gold. Well, here's the problem. There ain't no gold in Virginia. So one thing that they're coming here for, they're not going to find. The second problem is they bring a bunch of dudes over here. And I don't know if you know anything about biological, generational, whatever, but if you have a bunch of guys, you're probably not going to sustain family life, generations, and things like that. So Jamestown was almost a huge failure. And then here's we get into the real history versus the Disney version, but it was John Rolfe that really saved that colony, right? He discovers tobacco, his relationship with Pocahontas and the natives certainly helped, and the initial planters in the Chesapeake are rich. There's money there, and as soon as they find tobacco, things start rolling in Jamestown and west of Jamestown. You look at an old colonial map, Virginia looks like it stretches from east to west forever, and part of the reason behind that was the governor's idea of a headright system and indentured servitude. So poor people from England looking for a way out would come to America, to the Chesapeake, they'd come to Virginia, and if you were an indentured servant for 7 years, you'd earn your freedom then. Okay? You wouldn't have a pot to piss in, but you'd have freedom, which was maybe more than they had in England, or more opportunity that they had going for them. The headright system said that the governor would give you land if you paid for someone to come over. So you'd get 50 acres of additional land, and that's really how Virginia starts to expand out. And again, as you expand out, you're going to run into more issues with Native Americans, more issues with the tribes that are already out there. And one of the other issues that they were having was when these indentured servants do earn their freedom, they've got to go really far west to get really cheap land that's not good for farming, and you're creating a society of the haves and the have-nots. So that kind of comes to a head, and it starts crumbling down in 1676 with one of the most important early terms and events in American history, and that, of course, is indentured servants angry about their status in life. Governor Berkeley, today for breakfast I had sausage and
Bacon's Rebellion.
Bacon's Rebellion, 1676. So that's when this angry group of former indentured servants comes back to try to kill Lord Berkeley or Governor Berkeley, and ultimately you've got a sense of this indentured servitude thing isn't going to work anymore. We can't bring white laborers over for 7 years, have them serve, and then cut them free. It's the introduction of modern-day black slavery. So Bacon's Rebellion sets the table for the ending of indentured servitude and the beginning of looking for other sources of labor, which, as you know, from 1676 till the 1820s is going to become black labor, okay? And that's really the most important part about that. So now that we're here, and now that the English are here, you might want to create like a three-pronged thing that talks about the different colonial regions, because I'll go through the three really quick. So let's start first with the Chesapeake. Let's start with the South. What are they farming? Well, tobacco for sure, but as you move farther south, indigo and rice. Do not say cotton yet, because we're not there. Eli Whitney hasn't done his thing yet, right? We're not in Alabama, Mississippi. There's no people there yet. So it's indigo, rice, tobacco. Religion. Most of them are Anglicans. They have a poor system of transportation. Houses, communities, churches, schools, very far apart in the Chesapeake colonies, okay? Most of the Chesapeake colonies are royal colonies. And here's what that means. A king, the King of England, would appoint a cousin, a brother, a friend to head up the colony. Maryland becomes a refugee for Catholics. Georgia becomes a refugee for prisoners. England would send some of the dregs of their society to Georgia. It was a penal colony. They did that in New Zealand and Australia as well. North Carolina was sort of the squatters, the hillbilly farmers. South Carolina were sort of the more aristocratic farmers, right? Some of the wealthier farmers were in South Carolina. So that kind of sets up the South. The northern colonies, or the Massachusetts Bay colonies, in 1620, that's the year you got to remember there, the separatists are kicked out of England for religious reasons, okay? A lot of them go to Holland, but they don't like it in Holland because they don't want their kids wearing wooden shoes. And so they chartered another boat and landed on Plymouth Rock.